Yeah. So the COVID Justice Resolution is the result of a coalition effort by the Autism Action Network, Children's Health Defense, the Health Freedom Defense Fund, Stand for Health Freedom, and the Brownstone Institute, all organizations doing a lot of good work in the health freedom movement. And very probably many of you on this call are familiar with at least some of these organizations, especially if you're involved in the Kennedy campaign or if you're involved in the health freedom movement. You probably heard of them. And what this is it's in the form of a proposed resolution that they're trying to get the U.S. Senate to adopt. So it's written in the language of a resolution, and the idea is to put some pressure on members of Congress, in particular the Senate, to get them to adopt this and basically say, never again are we going to repeat the kinds of mistakes, the kinds of governmental overreach that we experienced during the COVID pandemic. So yeah, that's kind of the basic idea of it. You can go, if you go to the website, covidjustice.org, you can sign it yourself as an individual. I'm going to be asking the Independence Party, when it has its regular fourth Tuesday meeting, fourth Tuesday of the month, to sign on as an organization. And that's why, one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of at least introduce the subject now so people can get familiar with it. But that's the general idea. And of course, I would argue that this goes directly to our principles of unity. In particular, Principle 7, which is the one on promoting public health, and Principle 4, restoring and protecting our civil rights and freedoms. It also touches on other ones like corporate control of government, because frankly, that's where a lot of this came from. You know, big pharma wanting its agenda and being pushed, the vaccines being the great savior of everything. And, you know, that's why, well, a lot of these policies came into play that this resolution is trying to counter and repudiate and say never again. So that's the basic idea of it. I don't know how much of this you have on slides. Oh, here we go. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, closures of school for in-person instruction. The evidence shows that public schools were not vectors of transmission. You know, we now know, or we should have known even at the time, that the COVID-19 primarily impacted older adults, and the impact on children was next to zero. In any event, closing schools was ineffective, but what it did do was cause a lot of harm. You know, delayed education, kids not able to get school lunches that they depend on for their nutrition. Mental health outcomes worsened. There's a whole list of things, of adverse effects from closing the schools. Similarly, the other aspects of the lockdowns, I would argue, and I think the evidence clearly shows, did more harm than good. Businesses closed. I mean, we had kind of a mini recession over this. There were some people who got very wealthy over this, but the small businesses that we favor were very badly harmed during the lockdowns. The mask mandates were never based on good science. You know, we can get into the weeds on all of this, but basically, the evidence showed, the Cochrane review that did a meta-analysis of this, it showed that mask mandates don't work. When you're talking about an aerosolized virus that's transmitted through aerosolized forms, masks didn't really protect you against that. So the mask mandates didn't make much sense at all. And yet, even today, you still see people around wearing masks. The stay-at-home orders, confining healthy citizens to their residences, and that's not even there was also, the other closures, closing public beaches. You're outside, that you're not going to get the COVID virus when you're outside in the sunshine, right? The sunshine kills viruses. Some of these things that happen, we know, make no sense. They made no sense at the time. Restrictions on routine access in nursing homes, hospitals, other medical services. They went crazy during the COVID period, and a lot of people that needed to see doctors for other things other than COVID were denied access and couldn't get the services they need. There were delayed diagnostics. People suffered. People died as a result of this. So this is another mistake that shouldn't be repeated. And then removal from access to known therapeutics. The science really supported ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. It really showed that these were effective therapies in treating the virus. And yet there was this massive propaganda campaign to shout people down. There was the whole cancel culture thing, people getting censored, people getting deplatformed, physicians losing their licenses or being brought up under charges, losing hospital privileges. I'm sure most of us on this call are familiar with this whole story. This resolution is aimed at saying never again. We're not going to repeat these kinds of mistakes. There's also provisions here about protecting places of worship, protecting bodily autonomy. No American may be compelled, coerced, or subjected to adverse employment or educational consequences, or denied access to businesses or services for declining any medical intervention, including vaccination during a public health emergency. And yeah, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I think you get the general idea. It comes out against cancel culture. It comes out against the censorship that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., being one of the disinformation dozen, he was censored. Many others, really sound voices of science, were censored or deplatformed, etc. And this resolution is saying never again. So my ask is, and I'll be asking formally at the end of the month, is, should the Independence Party sign on? I'm saying yes, I think we should. This is right up our alley. It's consistent with our principles. I think we should sign on to the COVID justice resolution.
Did you want to open it up to debate on the floor?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone has questions or other concerns about it, yeah. I see Michael has his hand raised. Go ahead, Michael.
Why is the word justice used, and how is it put forth to remedy the harms that were done then? And since you went down the whole list and said that good science wasn't used, what would you characterize was used? Is bad science even science in that regard then, or the opposite of it? Or was it they knew better the whole time? Like, I would think gain of function Fauci knew masks didn't work, yet he said it, and was given authority by whom? The Constitution? And if not the Constitution, how is engaging as a public official in unconstitutional acts not illegal? Maybe that would just solve almost every damn thing in our government, if it would be against the law to, as a public official, do something that's unconstitutional.
Right. Well, we know public officials do things unconstitutional all the time. We had a president just did that a few days ago. But then it gets into a question of enforcement, and what this really is about is political mobilization to get the forces of the health freedom movement together to say to government, this is, yeah, we want it does go beyond justice. It does go to enforcement. And it also goes to, don't repeat the mistakes that were already made. Don't do this again. We, the people, are saying no, and we want you, the Senate, to say no with us. That's what we're trying to do here. As far as why they chose the word justice, I mean, I wasn't one of the authors of this, but I think what it's really about is justice in the sense of fairness of treatment, and stop don't tread on me. Stop trampling our civil liberties in the name of science or the name of public health, because that's what they did.
Who would police it who would police it if they just did it again? I mean, I don't know how this is going to stop anything. It's like the international court saying Bibi has committed war crimes and Putin has, and nobody ever gets arrested. So, to me, it just seems like even if it got passed, there's no weight behind it, because if they do it again, I don't see this as a deterrent, because nothing happened to the people who were engaged in gain of function that was the initial salvo that created the whole thing in the first place. I mean, if COVID hadn't happened, which it didn't happen in nature, then none of this whole system would have ever happened, nor the wrong people in power that abused all of this wouldn't even require this response.
Well, Mike, nobody's claiming that this is going to be the solution. This is one weapon. We need a lot of other weapons to prevent this kind of thing from happening again. So the fact that this one resolution would not solve all the problems, I don't think is a reason to not sign it. It is one tool, one way of confronting the abuse of power. And that's what this is about. It's not the only way. It may not even be the most effective way, but it is one way. And if it's consistent with our principles and it's part of a political mobilization to try to prevent these abuses from happening again, I think it's something we should sign on to. It's not the end of our efforts. It's just one part of our efforts. Bob, go ahead.
So there are a lot of things that lean towards this, but I'll offer that while this does, hit squarely, let's say, within Principle 7 around bodily autonomy and so on, it goes directly against Principle 5 of heal the divide. The words that we've used here is around abuse of power. This is unconstitutional. That was good science versus bad science or whatever. We have to remember there's an entire group of folks who believe the exact opposite. And I guess my question is, when you look at this resolution, which to me reads like somebody saying, hey, you did a bunch of bad things, never again, we're now going to do exactly the opposite. How is this an example, or how would we make this an example of healing the divide versus the other side finally gets to win?
I'm not sure that it's aimed at healing the divide, but I don't think it makes the divide worse. This is basically, I think the majority of people, or certainly a plurality of people, the people who are actually trying to follow the science, the people who are actually trying to stand up for public health, asserting themselves. Simply because the movement is asserting itself, that's not itself creating a rift. This is not condemning people who choose to wear masks, for example. It's saying the mask mandate was wrong. It wasn't based on good science. That is simply the truth, or at least the prevailing evidence supports that. And this is a way to try to get government to weigh in on the side of that. But it's not saying, we're not here condemning people who chose to wear masks. We're not condemning people who chose to get the vaccine. This is standing up for people to be able to make those choices.
I agree. I don't even think we use the word condemn, but let's just say we are pushing back against those who would require a vaccine or require your kids to stay home. Hey, your kid's sick. Don't bring them to school. That's a parent's fear or right or concern or opinion, right? Mm-hmm. We can say, well, no, you should never close schools. And how do you avoid having that go directly against people who go, yeah, please don't have sick kids in my school? To me, it feels like this is a one side versus the other side. I happen to be on one side of this argument. But the fact is, I wouldn't want to have a resolution come, which I find it hard to read this resolution without it feeling like finally our side gets to say this. That's what I truly feel like. A sober reading of this is not balanced. This is the other side. It's the pendulum on the other side.
Okay. Well, I would draw a distinction between parents' rights to keep their kids out of school and schools being closed for everyone, right? I mean, this was governmental overreach is what we're talking about here. And it's saying, no, you can't be using these authoritarian type powers simply because there's a perceived public health emergency, right? So again, I don't see how this is actually going against our principle in favor of healing the divide. It's part of the conversation. Healing the divide doesn't mean that you don't take positions on anything because you're afraid the other side, or you're concerned that the other side might take offense. It means we need to stop, we need to stop tribalism in politics. We need to stop shutting down the other side. We need to be talking to each other. This is part of the conversation, in my view. But it's part of the conversation on the side that we favor, yes, but it's still a conversation. Go ahead, Denise.
I just want to say that I don't see this as hurting the heal the divide principle at all. To me, this resolution just states the facts that were not allowed to be spoken aloud during the pandemic because censorship was so heavy. And I think that it's good that we're stating the facts and putting people on notice that that these are the facts and we live by the facts, and this stuff shouldn't happen again.
Alex had a question in the chat about this could be used to have leverage in future political events. And I would agree, to the extent that we're aligning ourselves with MAHA, broadly construed. I think this would be good for us to be doing that, to be signing on to this petition and in support of the right, of people that are on the same page as us on public health. Go ahead, Andrea.
I think that signing the petition is a good way to start these hard conversations that we need to have, that we can't have government say what we can or cannot do. It's always your choice. We don't want to take away the choice. We just want to have these conversations so the government will not do this again.
Yeah, agreed. Mike, go ahead.
And along those lines, I think it would be very divisive to suggest that we're correct about the science, because I would suggest half the country or more, given 80% of the country, took a COVID jab and believed that was the science and required for their health. I don't know that number has changed that dramatically. I haven't seen any polling. I would believe it's about 50-50, and about half the country still thinks that how it was handled, including suppression of speech, was correct due to public safety and health concerns. If we had people out there saying that you should go and wrestle a tiger and then kill its young and eat it, and the government said you're not allowed to say that because it's killing people, of course there would be lawyers that would get involved and make arguments that we need to make a decision here. There's different freedoms at stake here. There's also public health, which I don't know that we've ever had a great debate nationally about how do you handle public health. We're saying that how it was handled was wrong, and to merely say, well, we should be able to still discuss things and not censor things, still does, I would say, still does what? At some point, somebody needs to say, no, this is what we're going to do. Enough talk, or people are going to die. And that's basically what they said. And they said all of the science with the triple masking and getting 8 boosters was great science. all of our experts and elected officials were running on that for the most, not all of them were running on it. The people in power, the people that got medals from Trump were, like Fauci. And they've never come back and said, you know what, we have reevaluated the science and we were wrong then. Redfield, I believe, is the only one, but more so he's explained that there were inner emails that suggested that they knew it was BS at the time, which is a very different thing. And this won't change government lies in government harm, which is also what occurred. It wasn't just, oh, their science was wrong and they suppressed things. They knew it was wrong, which is a very different thing.
So, Mike, would your point be, though, on the science that, you know, maybe the real harm here was not, well, your scientist was wrong and mine was right, but rather, hey, we couldn't even have the debate. And if you went back to this one and said, look, there's one statement in here that says no more censorship of alternative viewpoints, whatever that is, right? Now you have a lane in which people can have the honest discussion. Let's be honest, anyone on this call is going to argue over the power of vitamin D or spinach to heal your health. And we'll have very heartfelt scientific reasons for believing our point, and we won't agree. But that doesn't mean that we have to be divided. It just simply means that we both can have the discussion. It'd be one thing, though, for us to suppress and say, well, your vitamin ideas are horrible. You're never allowed to say them, right? Which actually is what happened, right?
And just, there was a lot to answer in Mike's last comment. I did want to point out, though, that I don't think it's 50-50 anymore. The last figures I heard, almost nobody's taking COVID boosters anymore, the vaccine boosters. It's dropped down to like, I don't know, 15% or something like that. It's really low. So yeah, no, I think people eventually, even though the corporate media kept pushing this narrative for 2-3 years, eventually the fact that, hey, it doesn't prevent transmission, hey, it's not effective, hey, people suffered injuries, there's the Veris data, there's all this other stuff showing the vaccines were not only ineffective but harmful. I think there's a much greater general awareness of the evidence on this at this point. Sarah, go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Rich. I'd just like to add the commentary that, in my opinion, it was a little disingenuous from the start, because I don't think it technically even falls under what's considered a vaccine. This is more in line with the flu shot. So if you're already marketing it as something it isn't, that tells a story, in my opinion, personally. Right? A good product will sell itself. You don't have to play games like that. And just the fact that they were calling it something it wasn't raised alarms for me personally.
Yeah, I quite agree. It wasn't truly a vaccine. Alejandro, go ahead.
Yeah, just to Sarah's point that of how they marketed it, it was actually a form of gene therapy and new technology used, and they were deceitful by, introducing it as a traditional vaccine, So yeah, this was a big issue, definitely right there. That's all.
Yeah. Stephanie, go ahead.
I did sign the COVID justice resolution as an individual. And on their website, the last paragraph, well, not the last, it says, this resolution does not assign blame. It does not trade in fear. It reasserts constitutional limits. It stands as notice to the future. Emergency powers must never again override liberty, evidence, or human dignity. So, don't see anything wrong with that.
Thank you for pointing that out. Appreciate that. Oh, and by the way, and I've got my vitamin D right here. Alejandro, you have your hand up. Do you still,
Nice.
yeah.
Way to go, vitamin D. I'll put my hand down.
Yeah, it's spray form, bioavailable, really good for you.